Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. Amazing guests with incredible insights from all over the world. They've been there, they've done that, they've had transformative experiences. They're best-selling authors, they're professors, they're researchers, one Delta Force operator, all sorts of other healers, and you name it. Again, incredible people who are kind enough to come on a tiny show, but a lot of them take steps with angels. So stick around to the end of the show. You get to take steps. Today, no exception, coming to us from Canada, Jonathan Ellerby. Holy cow. I can tell you that when I started to quote pop intuitively 12 years ago, I did a little searching on the internet looking for help. What is happening to me? And I saw his thesis, postdoctoral thesis, and I was blown away by his work, his experiences. I got in touch, and eventually we started to be able to interact. So I got to thank Jonathan for just beginning an engagement with me and having a relationship over these years. He's been a spiritual director at Canyon Ranch, worked at Miraval, helping them on the spirituality front. He's been many other places and done incredible things. He's like very learned, credentialed, and just wonderful. Big author with a brand new book he's going to tell us about. Jonathan from Canada, thank you for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love. Great to see you again, amigo.
Hey, it's amazing to see you, and you've also done so much for me. Michael has guided me in many journeys, and most of them absolutely fabulous and powerful. And yeah, so I'm also grateful to you.
Can you, and thank you for that. Can you tell us a little bit about how did this all start that you learned to pay attention to the sacred? One of your books is very much about the sacred. You've taken time, I'm going to say up to even 11 years, 30 something years ago, to connect with the Lakota Sioux tribe. You got permission to kind of, I don't want to say hang out, but to start to learn and to be participating in their cultural practices. Very special steps that you've taken that very few others have. You've, again, traveled to Africa. What hooked you on the sacred, spiritual, the stillness within? How did you even learn that this existed?
Yeah, I mean the backwards thing about my story is that it that was my starting point. And it's funny because I started having dramatic, noticeable spiritual experiences at a young age. I think all kids are having some measure of spiritual experience. But then, kind of around 10, 11, we start looking outward and we start absorbing our conditioning and we start following, what's being presented as interesting or meaningful for us. And what happened for me at that time was that rather than moving away from a sense of spirit and spiritual connection, it actually suddenly got deeper. And I found myself perceiving directly energy. And I would also say a certain kind of magical timing and sequence of life. Like I felt probably from 13 to 14 that I was seeing a deeper dimension of reality being revealed. Now I wasn't on drugs. I didn't have a mental health condition. It was just the way it worked. Now, Michael, I'm gonna go on a little bit here because you are also a very gifted person. And when I use the word gifted, I think we are all gifted in all kinds of ways. Some of us, and this is not a small thing, some of us can bake a cake with no planning, no time, comes out perfectly every time. Everyone's amazed. And some of us can work at baking a cake, myself included, um, time and time again, and it's a disaster every time. Some of us pick up an instrument at a young age, and music just comes out. My son, he can play just about any sport he puts his mind to. Um, but I had this sort of spiritual thing going on, the ability to see and perceive things at another dimension or level. And then the journey went backwards, which was spending the rest of my life trying to understand what was that? And am I crazy? And then, of course, as I sought my own answers, I found new experiences and new teachers. And yes, as you shared, it took me deeper and deeper into all kinds of cultures and traditions. I never set out with the intention to specifically know those cultures or traditions. I was simply trying to understand the spiritual nature of our world. But of course, we're here to be human. So I made friends, I made family, and ultimately, not only have those things comprised the heart of my journey, but I'll admit my own work at being human um, is a big part of the process as well.
Okay. Tell us about your very first book. Was it Return to the Sacred or was it one prior to that?
Well, technically, I actually wrote a book. This is kind of interesting. I wrote a book for institution-based professionals working with Indigenous elders and healers. So, isn't I won't spend a lot of time on this book because it was a sort of a professional book. But the interesting thing about this book that I'd love people to know or recognize is that the whole concept behind it was that there were countless conflicts in institutional settings like hospitals, prisons, treatment facilities, where people of two different cultures were working together, let's say therapists or physicians, and then in would come an Indigenous elder or healer to work with the native population in that place. And the non native professionals would consistently misinterpret, judge, and misunderstand the behavior of the Indigenous elders until it was spelled out for them. This is what they're supposed to do. This is what they've always done. This is how they do it until they understood it. Now, this is so important. They saw it as wrong. They didn't want to support it, and in some cases, they even considered it dangerous. Now, why is this important to share with your listeners? Well, because this dramatic cultural example embodied in the book Working with Indigenous Elders is actually just a microcosm of what goes on all around the world. So I don't understand that political party. I don't understand that business person. I don't understand the person who just immigrated to my neighborhood from another country. And so rather than being curious, than being welcoming, than being loving, as probably many of your listeners would be, a lot of us get triggered, we get fearful, we get suspicious. And until we understand it, we're afraid of it. We make it wrong. And that's something that's got to change.
Beautiful. Okay, tell us about Return to Sacred. That was your first mainstream.
Yes.
Remember if it was Simon and Schuster, sounds true. It was or Hay House. It was one of the big publishing
Yeah.
outfits.
Yeah. So Simon and Schuster it distributes my new book, Spiritual Experience, for
Yes,
those looking
please.
at the screen right there. And then Return to the Sacred was with Hay House. And Return to the Sacred, I love that book. It's full of wonderful stories from around the world. And it's about helping people to not only understand what the spiritual journey is, but how do you know your own spiritual personality well enough that you could choose from one of the core timeless spiritual practices? So I look at all the spiritual, I sort of went through a research process, looked at all the different techniques and practices that people have used around the world to achieve spiritual connection, spiritual growth, spiritual experience, and then distilled them down to four categories or types: mentally oriented, emotionally oriented, physically oriented, and really distinctly spiritually oriented. And ultimately, there's three in each category, 12 total. And so when you read the book, you can find this way to discover where you're at, maybe what's next for you, and what might work best. But the last thing I will add, my favorite thing, is it's written to be super accessible and kind of easy and fun to read. But what I find is because it's layered, there's a lot of depth to it, I hope, I think. Um, I find that people who have been on the path a long time actually love it as much or more than people who are just waking up to the power of a spiritual path.
Can you talk to us about your own path, specifically? Your definitions of things has probably shifted, altered, expanded over time as
Mm.
you're sort of just more and more opening openness or being in your heart. What has shifted so that if it could be the definition of success, or it could be just remembering to relax more and everything, let the universe do its job? How has something shifted fundamentally so that, 1990 it was one way, 2000 was
Mm,
another, but now you're like, no, I think it's this way now. Can you share with us that evolution?
well, that's a great question, actually. I think I feel like two things have happened. I think I've gone away from some things, so I'll describe them in a moment, that I've come back to. And then other things, you're right, have changed and changed and changed. So the thing that I think that you just said something that made me think about one change that's probably notable, which is that at a young age and early in my career and journey, I thought of spirituality in this very rich, complex way, all these levels of growth and development, and this aspiration to help people enlighten, like totally awaken. And I think over time, I've come to relax a bit about that and realize that everyone's awakening in this life is at some level or in some way unique to them. That every soul is truly on its own journey, and what might be an extraordinary leap for one person, the equivalent of mind blowing enlightenment, might look like a small step to someone else. And yet, to that someone else who is apparently so evolved, they themselves may be stuck, right? So there's this, I think it's this thing about comparison and having an idea that there's a universal answer. Now, on the other hand, I do think that there are truths to life. I do believe we live in a universe of design. There's a reason why when you drop a pen, it falls to the ground. There's a reason why an imploding star becomes a black hole and so on. Um, and in the same way, there are psychological laws and spiritual laws, and that's why you can help people and say, well, try this and look there and wave this and think about that. So both are true, that at some level we're working within a grand design that has consistent laws and principles at work, and we all know it differently. We all language it differently, and we all know ourselves differently within it. Having said all that, there are two sort of definitions of spirituality that I've come to use for people that are trying to enter into it, especially if they're listening to your show thinking, oh yeah, I'm not just interested in angels. I want this spirituality thing. So at one point I realized, okay, we need to make this more of a facilitative definition. So I would describe spirituality as your answers, your living answers, meaning evolving, growing, your living answers to the biggest questions of life. Who am I really? You know, what really matters? What relationships are really important? Maybe why am I here? That kind of stuff. And what I love about those questions is, unlike what people have been told about spirituality and religion, they don't give you an answer. They invite you to seek an answer. And you discover spirituality is a journey, a process. And those big questions, if you pick them up every day or every week and you return to them, who am I really? Who am I really? Who am I really? Um, we find that the answer evolves. And first, I'm my job. Maybe then I'm my body. Then maybe I'm my roles. I'm a dad. I'm a boss. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm a son, or whatever, mother, daughter, and so on. And then little by little, oh, I'm a citizen. Oh, I'm a human. Oh, I'm a spirit. I'm a soul. I am consciousness. I am one with the divine. I am divine. God is me. I am God, and it goes on and on. But the easiest definition of spiritual maturity that I've come to love is it's the ability to be relaxed
Hmm.
in your own life, nothing more. And I think that speaks to so much of what you teach, actually, because when people relax, it allows their spiritual intelligence to awaken, to activate. And when they are in tension or striving to control their lives, their relationships, other people's impressions, and so on, then everything constricts. and the spiritual intelligence dries up. And we can talk about what spiritual intelligence is if you like.
Well, first I want to plug you because you've had a lot of, and I'm not going to have the right language for this, a lot of incredible stints, a lot of incredible positions with different organizations in which you've been helping people that at a societal level are really important. But I want to just emphasize one thing first. You've been giving, you've been learning a long time. You haven't stopped learning. You've been giving to different communities. And I know you've seen it all sorts of contrast, but what's beautiful is your own compassion and love for others is what's allowed you to not get caught up in some of the drama details. But you were director of spirituality at Canyon Ranch. You were head of the Althea Center in Denver. It goes on. There's other positions as well. And what I did want to go back to is something you had mentioned about asking those questions, spiritual questions. In India, there's a long practice where the guru, if you sit before a guru, they're not going to tell you anything. You have to ask a question. Joseph Campbell mentions that in Power of Myth with Bill Moyers. It's super cute how the discussion goes. What are some of your favorite cultural spots around the world that you've appreciated either because you've been or you just love it?
Ooh.
It resonates. And it could be India.
Nobody ever asks me that. That's
Yeah,
my favorite
what
question.
resonates that you're like, no, they do it right. I mean, I wouldn't want to just not be told anything all the time. Sometimes I'm so hung up that I'm like, I need help. Just tell me my answer. I don't even know what to ask.
Yeah,
But in
yeah,
India, they do it the other way. Share with us some of the flavors around the globe. Where do you love to
yeah,
travel with? What have been some transformative experiences, if we can even get that far? What has impacted you and rippled? And I know the Lakota Sioux thing is going to be a big part of it,
yeah.
but we'll save that one for a little bit later.
Okay, so I'm going to list 4 places, cultures, traditions that have transformed my life. I'm going to do a quick highlight of each, and then that way, if I ramble on and forget anything, you can dig in. For me personally, and this is only me, right? I've been very fortunate. I've been to all kinds of places, China and Australia and New Zealand and a few countries in South America and Europe and many countries in Africa, blah, 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 goes on and on. But for me personally, India, in terms of places where spirituality or culture has a dramatic, I feel has a dramatic contribution to the world because it had a dramatic contribution to me. So India, Africa, Mexico, actually, and Indigenous America, or specifically the Lakota Sioux. Now, I'll give you the quick highlights of each. So, what's extraordinary about India, I just like mind blowing, is that in India, as you know, but maybe listeners don't know, they, collectively, I'm generalizing, have been evolving spiritual understanding and the understanding of consciousness and practices to access, to evolve, to grow consciousness and language to articulate all of it for long, I mean, arguably continuously longer than any other culture. Now, that's a big claim. Obviously, Aboriginal people in Australia have been at this for 60,000 years. Okay, okay, they win. But in terms of what offers something very accessible to the average viewer, listener here, I mean, India is just a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and practice. And when you travel there, you feel the immersiveness, right? You feel that there is some acknowledgement of spirituality, consciousness everywhere. And there's this common misunderstanding about India because people think, oh, isn't that the country with 36 million gods? Like, what the heck do they know? It's a bunch of wackos. Well, of course, it's diminishing and disrespectful and very Western to say things like that. But the problem is that in the West we don't understand pluralism, and pluralism means that you can hold a variety of views as true at the same time. So in India, there are many ways to understand the infinite one, and it's okay. They don't all have to be right or make each other wrong. We also hear a lot about India in the news, conflict and, Sikhs versus in the north and Pakistan versus India. But again, this is politics. You can go to hundreds, thousands of Indian cities and see Christians, Jews, Muslims, multiple sects of Hinduism, and even pre-Hindu traditions, Jainism, Sikhism, all coexisting. So in terms of wealth, diversity, richness, um, you know, it's like the target of the spiritual world. I love it. So that's my India synopsis. Should I keep rolling?
Oh, please, like Africa, Australia, New Zealand, keep going.
All right. So, okay. So the thing for me that I love about Africa, and I still take people to Africa, small, admittedly, they're luxury groups, they're expensive trips, but in very small groups, we do deep, deep personal work while interacting with traditional culture and wildlife. And we are a part now, my trips include conservation work. So the last trip we were involved in capturing black rhino. Like I'm telling you, out of the movies, right? The vet's in the helicopter with the darting gun, and we're in the back of a Jeep, blasting through the bush, racing to find the rhino before it disappears with the dart, cutting the horn off so that they will not be murdered by poachers for the horn. Okay, well, that's a little bit about some of the cool stuff I'm doing there, but the thing that I feel personally in Africa is that there is still a very, very powerful old energy and consciousness, like what I would almost call an original energy. And it's not just in the people where there's a rootedness, a centeredness, a groundedness, a feeling of unbroken time and history. And I'm speaking more about Southern Africa, East Africa. That's where I've been. Um, But of course, the wildlife has had an impact on me. And it's dramatic. And it's not just that you can go there and see the animals that used to be on your pajamas as a kid or you only saw in a zoo. But there's just something very timeless and visceral. So there's a physicality to Africa that I think is very important and powerful. If you walked through any village or any town in Africa, and this is a bit of an exaggeration, but in Southern Africa, East Africa, and you just started playing your drum, people are going to start dancing. People will start singing. People will come and be with you, laugh with you, connect with you. It's remarkably loving, hospitable, personal, and that's an important part of the journey too, right? So India somehow points us towards the fullness of it all, the complexity of all, and Africa points us to the simplicity of it all. In Mexico, where I lived for a little more than a few years, I think what struck me is maybe something between the two, right? Something between Africa and India, in the sense that people often forget that there is kind of no such thing as Mexico. Mexico is a syncretic byproduct, meaning the synthesis of colonial influences, predominantly Spanish, and indigenous culture. Mexicans look Mexican because they are indigenous by ancestry. And sure, in cities like Mexico City, you see lighter skinned people with more Spanish influence. But Mexico, to me, represents I love Mexico, so people are going to get a very biased opinion, but it represents possibility, that we can really bring together old world, new world, mind, body, soul. Um, these things coexist very well together in Mexico with more of an integrity, let's say for me, than in India, where there's more diversity, coexistence, beautiful coexistence. But that's clearly a temple, and that's clearly a mosque, and that's clearly a, Hare Krishna, whatever temple. But in Mexico, there is Mexico. There is something about it, the land, the original cultures that somehow enveloped everything that came in. All the conquerors and all the travelers and all the expats, and You know, it has something to do with the climate. It has something, I mean, honestly, I think it has something to do with the food, it has something to do with the land, the language. So it represents a beautiful way that things can synthesize and harmonize. Now, yeah, there's all kinds of crime in Mexico and there's drug lords and sure, there's all kinds of horrible stuff too. But just for me spiritually, there was a great lesson in that. And the last thing I'll mention on that is, well, I'll mention two last things. In Mexico, you have a lot of spiritual sophistication, something like India, but you have the rootedness, something like Africa, which is why also there's lots of music and there's lots of dance and there's, again, the food, you know, this sort of sensuality to the culture. Um, but the other final thing I was going to say about Mexico that's powerful is that whatever has come into Mexico, and in this case, I'm specifically thinking about religion. You know, people think of Mexicans as very Christian, right? There's this pervasive Catholic tradition, and even most Mexicans would call themselves Christian. But for me, with a background in ethnography and anthropology and spiritual studies, I'm looking at this and I'm like, what are you talking about? This is not Christianity. This is like some magical baby that Christianity and indigenous curanderos had together, you know? So you go to some of these old churches and temples and cathedrals, even when the conquistadors and the Spanish were as aggressive enough as to destroy old sacred indigenous sites and build churches right on the bones of these ancestors. If you go in those old temples, or pardon me, cathedrals, and you look around, you'll see in the iconography, you'll see carved into the benches, the pews, you'll see everywhere these little signs that the old world is still present. It's it's something new, which is why Guadalupe, the mother of Christ, Mary, is huge in Mexico. She's bigger than Jesus in Mexico. And it's because that's the spirit of the land, the people. They were matriarchal, they were feminine rooted, they were earth centered. So, of course, they didn't really swallow and spit out Christianity the way it was brought in. I think that's worth paying attention to. Should I finish or do you want to jump in?
No, tell us another location or keep going with Mexico.
Yeah,
You're doing great.
I got one more. So the last one for me is, uh, you know, my what I would consider almost like my home away from home. Well, not almost, it is my home away from home. And that is the Lakota Sioux communities. Now, I don't specifically think everyone listening should go try to be Indigenous. I think we can't be pretendians, as they say, um, and it's not only the Lakota that should be studied or whatever. The point is, what I found in my life at a young age that then I was fortunate to um, become a part of was that the indigenous traditions of the Americas, like many, have retained a consciousness and a worldview and a way of being that is distinctly different than what we find in the West. Now, I just happened to find myself with Lakota people. It wasn't because I was looking specifically, but one of the strengths of that community, and there are some others like this around the States, it was because of their culture, because of some important factors of time and history and spiritual personalities and even geography, they were a more resilient culture. Whereas there are communities, for example, where I used to live in California, and even today in, you know, the 21st century, they are still trying to pick up the pieces of what was dismantled and shattered. Whereas for the Lakota people, when, you know, they had a pretty horrific and painful history of American colonization in the 1800s, but so much of their culture was able to go underground. And so much of their culture was able to go into the wilderness. And so while it was almost extinguished forcibly. Of course, it was not. And so there's language, and there's literature too, which is also unique about the Lakota people. When I did my master's degree, even though I wanted to articulate in Western terminology things I had learned firsthand through experience and mentorship, I also, as a responsibility to academics, had to read about the tradition. And I found I also had a concentration in Native studies. So I found that there was more, there was just more work done on and by Lakota people. So you could read and 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 read. And yeah, a chunk of it, if I may say, is kind of bullshit because it's just Western fantasies distorting things. But there's tons of Indigenous authors in the Lakota space. And now there's many Indigenous authors writing all over, which I really recommend people read. And let me sort of finish by saying, so what I feel we need, and when I say we, I mean our world, um, is that connectedness to the spirit world, much like what you help people with, is the connectedness with Earth, and a more circular way of life. There's an interesting story, and maybe this is where I'll stop talking about this. But there's an interesting story about something that happened in the 1970s when the Black Panther movement was coming across the United States, fighting for the civil rights of African American, Black American people, and saying, we want equality, we want equity, we want the same as anyone else in society. And so they came out to the reservations of South Dakota. This is an actual story. It's actually in the book God is Red by Vine Deloria. Super book. Such a good book. And what a great title. God is Red in your face, right? But it's a very powerful story because the recording of the conversations shows that when the Black Panthers said, join us in the fight for equality. We want what they have. We want the same jobs, the same pay, the same opportunity. What the Indigenous activists said was, good luck, because we don't want that. We don't want to be the CEOs of corporations. We don't want to be doctors in their hospitals. We want our medicine. We want our industry. We want our culture. And it's not the same. So we want the freedom from that and the freedom to be who and what we are. And I think, kind of in closing on this topic, I think it's very, very easy for people outside any tradition, and that would even include the tradition of communicating with angels. It's very easy for anyone outside of an experience to just project or transpose your worldview onto theirs. Like, oh, of course, Native people are just like me, except they love nature. No, that's not it at all. This is a whole other level of consciousness. And I don't think that any one culture is right. I don't think any one culture has it all. I think we all need each other so we can learn about the fullness of human experience and how to coexist with all dimensions of our reality, including the spiritual.
Your PhD talks about phenomenology. Remember the whole,
Yes.
you have a real struggle there because you're having direct first person experiences, which really apply to the scientific method. You're supposed to be the observer, prove it, document.
Right.
And
good,
then there's that contrast,
memory.
the conflict of Western approach to the topic. I remember that very distinctly. Can you just touch upon that? You've already been doing that in a way. And the struggle of writing that, I mean, it could not have been an easy doctoral thesis to write.
Yeah, you have such a great mind and remember that so well. So the controversy in really any ethnography writing about another culture is the question, can a person who has one worldview and mindset really study, understand, and represent another worldview and mindset? Now, The tricky thing is, I think the answer is yes, but the original assumption about how that happens for me, and for frankly now thousands, maybe millions of scholars, the newer conclusion is not the way we thought. So the old world, to your point, was you show up, you hang out, right? You drink the local drinks, and you go to the local ceremonies, and you take pictures, and you write lots of notes, and you say, oh well, they turn in a circle 3 times, and this symbolizes this, and they give gifts, and this is a kinship pattern, and it's all broken down in a Western mindset. And what we found was that people from these cultures, whether it was in China or Australia or Indigenous America, they'd read these things and say, as the years went on, they would read these things and say, this is garbage. That's not why we do this. That's not why we did that. That's not what this means to us. So much of anthropology and religious studies and even sociology for the early decades or century of academics was just the creation of a kind of Western interpretation of the world. Meaningful in some way, but just not accurately reflecting the authentic experience of others. So I'm going to go to what the option is. But this is important for people to hear because that's what you're doing. You look at your neighbor and judge whether they wear a mask because of COVID or whether they don't wear a mask because of COVID. You judge who they vote for and why. You judge how they dress, their gender, their sexuality. They're not spiritual enough. They're too spiritual. But this is a constant imposition of one worldview on another. And it just was played out in the academic field. So I was really fortunate because my PhD advisor, and this is a long story I won't tell, but was someone I got to meet like 15 years earlier at a special lecture series in my first year of my undergrad. His name was Ewart Cousins. He was quite an acclaimed scholar, but he wrote this very provocative article that really was the basis of my work. And he proposed, yes, we can understand other people and we can even speak of that experience, but only if we learn to adopt what he called a mystical consciousness. Only if we cultivated the ability to set down our worldview, not just observe what they're doing, but participate fully with their beliefs as our own beliefs, with conviction and certainty and full investment. And there was a great book, and I don't want to be all academic about this. Oh, yeah, there's a great book by an anthropologist named David Young, and the book was called Being Changed.
Mm.
And it was all about anthropologists and scholars who either intentionally or accidentally set down their judgments and worldview and fully entered into other cultures. And then he writes about, well, it's a series of articles by different authors. They all write about how it changed them forever. And in the same way, people listening, people watching, we can enter into a deeper relationship with each other, with our neighbors, and with the spirit world. But it requires this kind of letting go of ego, letting go of attachment, letting go of the idea that I already know the answer before I ask the question. And yes, in my case, it led to, I mean, profound experiences and experiences, I mean, that I still struggle to understand. You and I've talked about my funny relationship with the spirit world. I have, can I tell a spirit story?
Yes, please.
Because I really wanted to tell you this personally, but everyone will get a kick out of this. So, okay, Mr. Spirituality here. It's my life, it's my work. Get the new book, Spiritual Experience, right? You'll hear about all these things that have happened to me. But the point is, my conditioning is so deep, I can still feel it. I can still feel the conditioning of growing up in a white Western world and how talking about spirits and angels is still, I mean, it's natural for me, but there's still this kind of like little voice in the head that I'm like almost rolling my eyes at myself. So the book came out in February when this is recorded. I don't know, it doesn't matter when people are listening, but it came out in February of 2024 at the end of the month. And I was traveling for work. I was in a hotel. Absolutely true story, no exaggeration. I was laying in bed. It was just after the release, and I was kind of praying and meditating, and I was thinking, gosh, I write about all these things, but I don't feel like I've really paid enough attention to the spirit world lately. I mean, it's always there for me, but I was like, I had a moment of like, dang, like I don't have any stories lately because I'm not really engaged. And I am not kidding. In the black of the hotel room, a light turns on. Right? This is the light over the closet. And I was like a little freaked out. And I could feel sort of energy in the room moving around. It felt like there were, I don't know, it felt like there were two or three of these visitors. Now, here's the crazy, this is the beginning of the story. You're gonna love this. And you can tell this story. So I was like, oh, okay, you're here. I'm sorry. I thank you. We gotta hang out more. Okay, so I stayed up a little, prayed a little, meditated a little, fell asleep. Now, there was it's a long story, but the hotel I was staying in was booked. I had 3 nights working with a company. It was booked on the last night. I had to move to a new hotel. So at the end of the workday, got a Uber, whatever, 15 minutes in a different direction, get in a different hotel, middle of the night, kind of wake up groggy, on my way to the bathroom. A light turns on out of the blue, pitch black, didn't touch a thing, no motion sensors, light turns on. I'm like, okay, you're still here. I was a little tired, like not as enthusiastic. Now, Michael, this is not the end of the story
Mm.
because I was just on a trip and I swear to God, the same thing happened. Same exact thing. 2 different hotels. Lights are out to go to bed, and the friggin' light goes on. Now, this time, I I said because the light beside the bed like went on like on a dimmer. It was like, whoop, and then went down dark again, and I was like, okay, are you fucking with me? Like, what's going on here? Are you really here? Like that. The point is, I'm having these experiences. I write about this stuff. The light literally turns on, and then I'm like, are you really there? Like, what? What do we need? And sure enough, the light goes like super bright. I was like, okay. So why do I share the story? Well, I share the story because I thought you'd laugh. I think a lot of people listening, they crave these things and they listen to you because they want to break out of their reality. And the whole point of the PhD work that you talked about is that's the message, though. If we're really going to understand what the traditional healer sees or what the other culture sees or experience the spirit world in their way, then we've got to set down the way we think things work and the way we think what we think we are, who we think we are, and be truly open. Because as we relax, and you teach that, as we relax our minds and open our hearts, we discover that there are dimensions and dimensions of this existence that are beautiful and powerful and helpful.
Well, I have the same reaction. If I feel a wind in the room where the windows aren't open, you're wondering, is the AC unit on? I still run to my thermostat as fast as I can just to check. Is it on or off? Could I have the brain
Right.
has a way of rejecting the obvious, the simple, and the beautiful way the universe will get in touch. Okay. A last question on the whole like spirit guide, spirit animal thing. Owls. You've had a
Oh,
lot of owls over time. Can you just take a few minutes on owls showing up where, again, same phenomena as the light going on? You're like, wait a second, this is a moment. I need to
I
take it
know.
in.
I know. I really like, what is my problem? I'm
Hey,
such a,
everyone's slow in the uptake, so it's not just you, it's me, it's everyone.
I know.
Talk to us. You've had a lot of owls show up at key moments. Can you just share a couple of those stories?
Yeah, well, what I'll do, it's a very colorful story, but I think better if I give the high level version
Mhm.
so that I can compress the story, but people can understand the magnitude because this is crazy. So, FYI, there's a long version. The short version is this. So now I'm going to speed it up. It was 2 days. I think it was about 2 days before I was supposed to go to South Africa to begin my PhD field research with traditional healers. I wake up that night in the middle of the night. I have a super strange feeling that there's something in the room. I hear some noise. Again, fast version of the story. And all of a sudden, because I was in a basement unit, my bedroom, there were no windows. It was pitch black, but all of a sudden I felt something on my head. And I gently reached up and I tried to touch and see what it was. And there was this like fluff. And I could feel these little claws. And there was two owls sitting, or well, there were two birds sitting on my head. I didn't know what they were. Now, actually, at the time, it's a long story. My dad had just died. I was staying with my mom. I got up slowly because I was like, oh my gosh, I got birds on my head. I can't have them flying around and pooping in the bedroom. So I slowly make my way up the stairs and I'm heading to the patio door to get rid of these owls or these birds. And I look into this painting, very dark painting. So in night with the glass reflecting these birds, and they were owls.
Mm.
And at that point, still not clicking into the magic, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta get this. This is ridiculous. Like, I was panicking. I thought they're gonna fly around and break things. So I get to the patio door. I open the patio door. I try to shoo them out. I close the patio door. I turn around and they're hovering in the room. And then all of a sudden it hits me, oh, these aren't owls. And I get ready to call to an upstairs unit to my mom. And that's when I wake up and realize the whole thing was a dream.
Mm.
Now, the next day, I had a girlfriend at the time. I remember talking to her, telling her the story. She said, what does it mean? I said, I don't know, but I think maybe a healer or ancestors from there are checking me out here. So we were out for a drive that day because I was looking at buying a home at the time. I remember driving in towards the countryside, and it was like late summer, early fall, and there on the side of the road was a white owl. A white owl. Like, it didn't even make any sense, and the two of us saw it. Okay, now here's the best part. I go over to Africa. I show up. I'm having dinner with my advisor and my host to take me up to the community. I tell them about the owls. Does it mean anything to you? And what do they say? No, not at all. I was like, what? But two owls. I had two owls on my head. Isn't two owls significant? No. So I go off to the village. I meet the first traditional healer. We do our meeting and our, reading the future and divining with the bones and all this stuff. I finish the meeting, ask him if he knows about two owls. I had two owls on my head. No. And this happens again and again and again. I'm like, I'm going to stop asking people about owls because I mean, I was expecting someone would say, I'm George Two Owls. Welcome to Africa. I'm the owl guy. That's my spirit. Nothing. Now it's 2 days before no, it's a week before I leave. Sorry. And I was staying in a little village and there was a hot springs there. And the family that I stayed with said, you got to go to the hot springs. I'd been working with the healers and picking medicine and I was probably pretty stinky. They were like, go have a bath and try the hot springs and, you'll love it kind of thing. So I go and, again, trying to make a long story short, I ran into a gentleman there I did not expect to meet. He was filling up his water from the spring and he was kind of an African gentleman. There was actually no white folks around where I was for a long, long ways. And all of a sudden, we are kind of acting like each other wasn't there. It was a little bit awkward. And all of a sudden he turns around and he says, hello. And I was scared. So he asked me what I was doing in Africa. I told him about my studies, which is, something you got to be careful about. Studying with traditional healers in Africa is not something welcome by everyone. And he says, I knew it. I knew it. You were sent to me. The ancestors just told me you were sent to me. Why don't you come study with me? I'm a traditional healer. So I was like, I don't know. He speaks reasonable English. Might as well go. I did not tell him about the owls because I was tired of being rejected. We spent an amazing week together. This guy became someone very important to me, really a teacher I went to see over many years. And just before I left, now it was 2 days before, he said, well, before you go, you need to come with me because I've been having a dream about this place in the side of the mountain, and we have to go. And he tells me this is a place that no one ever goes. It's an old, 1,000-year-old shaman home or something kind of weird like this. And we have to go to the royal family, make an offering, and blah, blah, blah. And we come out, and it's the end of the day, and we're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere. And there's this big crevice in this high rock wall. And you can kind of see like maybe almost like an old structure, a wooden structure, like a fence almost. And he says, well, before we go up, we have to put down tobacco because it's a very sacred place. No one has ever been here in our community or village, blah, blah, blah. We put down the tobacco, and they use tobacco in Africa. And we look up, and just as we look to where we're going to go walk, an owl comes swooping out over our heads. And then number two owls, and they looked exactly like the owls from my dream. And he turns to me and I turn to him, and I'm thinking like, holy cow, it happened. And he says, that was most auspicious. And I'm thinking like, you don't even know about my dream. And he told me, not only have they never been to this place and no one ever goes there, but to see a mating pair of these owls in the daytime is absolutely mind-blowing. And that's when I told him my dream. And the conclusion of a very long story, I went home, and for the next month, I saw more actual physical owls everywhere I went and in my dreams than I've ever seen since. And I mean gray owls, horned owls, white owls. It was like Harry Potter.
Who? Hey, are you ready for some sage? I'm going to light sage. People have done this. If you've watched the show, stick around to the end. And then in like 5 minutes, we might take some steps with not just angels, a couple figures from India, a Native American chief. It's basic listening. We'll see what Jonathan wants to experience. It's just a little more love in the present moment. But I'm going to light some sage. People can taste it on their mouth as I'm lighting it. If you're hypersensitive, if you just want to smell sage, smell sage. But I'm going to add, why settle for linear? Let the universe deliver a little extra. 2 owls instead of 1. And if you're too tense, go camping. Okay, the bottom line is let a flower smell come in, an ocean smell on top of that. So here's a little bit of sage. Juniper Ridge, if you like the company in California, I think it's in all the Whole Foods. Very consistent. They've been doing this a long time. Red-tailed hawk feather I'm using. Allow. No triota. Always try Archangel Gabriel. It ain't about anything except there's nothing to gain, learn, or lose here or ditch. Just you've got the ability to smell. It's basic smelling. And Jonathan, are you catching in Canada a little bit of sage?
I am.
Any flowers on top of that? Wisteria, lavender.
Lavender.
There you go. And for folks at home, close your eyes if you want. Get a little rolling Wailea, Kanapali if you like Hawaii. But if you miss Bethany Beach in Delaware, do it. Baja, Mexico, whatever you can allow for. It's like anything normal in life. Forget all the spirituality, woo talk. What are you allowing for daily? Good luck with that. We got a lot of thinking going on. Okay, I'm going to snub this out before I smoke out the house. With your permission, I'll put up just a couple photos. People can put their hand out and feel the vibe. And maybe you can get a last reminder of a topic from a couple different either angels, figure from India. I'll put up 5 photos. Feel what you can feel. Here's Joy, the emotion Joy, the very first angel people generally meet in 12 years. She's the ambassador communicator. Just helps you park it up top to feel with your heart. What are you getting from Joy for either an experience, a smell, a feeling, or a few words? What'd you get?
Joy welcomes spirit.
Aw. Okay, I'll do Charlotte, and then we'll jump to some Native American chiefs, and then one figure from India. Charlotte's everybody's favorite school teacher with words meant to help you expand. If it was third form in New Zealand, Mrs. Johansson, think of her as her, not the one who got you in trouble. And there you could catch an ancient Egyptian incense if you want that's not available in any store today, but it'll rock your foundation. You just have to, you don't have to light anything to get it through two screens or from above. Just let her bring you something sacred. It could be Sedona wildflowers or Canadian highest vibration of Canadian forest. And what does she have as a reminder for us all?
From me?
Yeah.
Invest time daily
Nice.
in the practice. Yeah.
Okay. One quick photo. Older Geronimo. This one people want to put a seatbelt on. He's action, dry wit, humor on everyone's team. Very gentle. And this one will rock you at home for people watching. Feel what you can feel. Let them bring you one of those sacred smells. It could be anything: leather, tobacco, sweetgrass, juniper, desert piñol. You get the idea. What are you hearing from Geronimo? He's very yeah, nah. He's not formal, proper yes, no. He's more slang when he speaks. What are you getting from Geronimo? He's also like a lightning bolt. He should come in like that.
Yeah. Don't stop.
Good. Okay. Figure from India, Ganesh. Is Ganesh cool, or Sri Shirdi Sai Baba, the one from 100 plus years ago?
Let's do Ganesh.
Okay, I'll do Ganesh next. I've got a colorized photo of Sai Baba. He's just compassion, 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 straddles three religions.
Oh yeah, he's cool.
Hinduism, but he'll move, wink, smile, shoulder waggle, something in the photo. Your brain will say, I didn't just see that. Your heart says, oh my God, do that again. Catch an incense from an Indian temple in the air. Yep, and if you yawn, you're letting go. Don't cover it up. That's good. Just extra relaxing. What does he have for us all before I put Ganesh up?
Forgive before you understand why.
Oh my God, that's like the most. That's a T-shirt. That's
Yeah,
our
really.
bumper sticker, and I'm so sorry I just put it that way, but it was totally profound, and I thought it was amazing.
Oh, it's a good bumper sticker.
Oh,
Why
it
not?
is. It is. Okay, going to Ganesh, and if I can wrap it up, I'll try to remember the tiger that the Divine Mother rides on. Pure action on everyone's team, and you can feel the fur with your hand. So Ganesh is coming up because I'm scrolling. Oh, here we go. And yeah, it's a good Ganesh. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's a good one.
And feel what you can feel. Don't judge at home. Put your palm out if you want. Feel it on your toes, up and down your back. Ask for wind in the sails so you're twirling in the kitchen later and you don't even care. Who knows? Pour a cup of tea and sit and contemplate. What's Ganesh got for you?
I got it. I don't know how to say it simply. It's like, well, the simple words were work with the energy of change.
Aww.
But the feeling that I want to translate for people, for me, was that like we don't always get to pick how that unfolds. It might be hard, it might be scary, it might be whatever, but it is what it is. If you want to change and change is happening, then keep going. Don't try to make it perfect or beautiful or easy or comfortable. If the change is coming, go with the change.
Beautiful, Jonathan. Beautiful. Okay, one more.
Oh.
This big kitty is action from India, not a spirit guide or animal, more deity-like, but doesn't matter. Full on tiger, pure action on everyone's team. If you want to pretend that you have a big dog in the house and you reach out to the left side, like the big dog's walking by into the open part of your room, palm down, you could feel your dog walking by. You could feel the back of your dog, a big dog. Feel tiger fur as you put your left hand out into the room. Let the tiger walk by under your hand. Tons of people have done this. You can feel the tiger walk by and feel fur. One woman from India felt it on her wrist. You can get nuzzled, get a lick on your cheek. But the tiger has something to share as a reminder of like being in the now, the moment, action with no thought. What's the reminder for us all, Jonathan?
Hmm. This is kind of a curious thing.
And if folks at home want to hear a roar,
Okay, this
yeah.
is good. This is good. I wish I could write this down. But don't fight who other people are. Fight to be who you are.
Oh, God,
What?
you're hitting home runs today. Like
I
this is
know.
crazy.
I
You
don't
always
even
hit
know.
home runs.
Like, I'm like, what? I need to hear that. I gotta write that down. That's such
Oh,
a good one, though, right? Because we always feel like we'll define ourselves by telling everyone else they're wrong, but really we're doing that because we don't feel strong enough to be ourselves. So I think that's a great message for everyone today. Thank you.
when you judge people, Wayne Dyer said, you don't limit them, you limit yourself. That's the Wayne Dyer quote that just jumped out. Okay, last act, and then we'll have you finish us up with a final insight because you've been giving us nonstop, like an express freight train. Bam. I'm going to put my hand up. Only my highest intent. Really, angels, none of my thinking drama, bill paying me. If you don't mind putting your hand up in Canada, same thing though. None of the drama of having to worry about your 9th book, 10th book, 11th book, or that conference next week. Let's connect and just feel what you can feel. Let me know when you're feeling something. Ooh, I just got it. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to whoosh with this hand angel light, rainbow light, universal consciousness, whatever it is. Blame angels, blame Canada, blame India figures, blame everybody except you and I. Okay, feel what you can feel. It'll be your like Hindu chakras, your energy field. And keep the volume low. I'll do this 2 or 3 times. Let it get progressively bigger. And just feel a little rainbow light come your way, consciousness. And did you get that okay, Jonathan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, second one, if people want to turn up the volume, breathe a little more, put something out there to the universe to let go of. It could be this, it could be that. You know what it is. We don't need to know. Just let go. Here comes the second time. I'll blow through the microphone and do a little Hawaiian breeze. Catch something on your nose. And hopefully that was a little bigger. And you got that one okay, Jonathan?
Mm-hmm.
Third, go big, go home. You're already home. Let's go big. Take the volume knob off the receiver or whatever we're talking about. Turn it up. But ask the universe to keep rippling through the week, the month, the season ahead. Why settle for linear and limits when we can go no limits? Here it comes. Catch a little breeze on your nose. And how was that last one, Jonathan?
Nice.
Good. Well, wrap us up here. How big is the universe? Or is there help to be had if we're willing to allow for it? What do we do with this whole thing?
Yeah. All that. What you just said. I mean, we are in an infinite, we are in an infinite. So the thing that just hits me, I don't know if this is really what we want to end on, but we live in this infinite universe, and if we look at it, if we look at its magnitude and its mystery and its majesty, the stars, the trees, all these things that inspire awe, they are fashioned from the same material that we are. They are fashioned in the same design that we are. We are never alone. We are always guided. And there's always love and wisdom available if only we take the time to receive.
Gorgeous. All right. Jonathan Ellerby, incredible, incredible having you on. I'm going to throw my own spiritual hand grenade in at the end. And this
Yes.
is the challenge, the opportunity for growth that never stops for us all. It's love more, allow more. This is angels, not me. Love more, allow more. You can be happy now in this very moment without a single reason in the world. But you're going to say but at home. I'm going to say but what about this? What about that? Welcome to being human. Welcome to thinking. But anytime you choose, as Jonathan's been pointing out his entire show here, you can get to here and simply be or be more relaxed. Jonathan Ellerby, thank you very much for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love. You're a rock star. Really appreciated having you on.
Thank you, sir. Love to be with you, my brother, and blessings in all you do. And for all those that help you.
Exactly. See you
Yes.
soon.
All right. Thank you so much.